I don't usually overhype myself, but in this video we're going to go over the only formula you'll ever need to master prompting on ChatGPT and Gemini. So let's get started. Hey friends, and welcome back to the channel. If you're anything like me a couple of months ago, you know that prompting is a very important skill to learn, but you're just not sure why some prompts lead to super generic outputs while others give you exactly what you're looking for. In this video, I'm sharing these 6 building blocks that make up a good prompt so that you can use this formula to consistently generate high quality outputs. First, it's critical to not only know what these 6 components are, which is task, context, exemplars, persona, format, and tone, but also know that there's an order of importance to these components. To show you what I mean, let's go through a quick example. I want to plan a surprise birthday party. Give me a checklist of things to do. The first part is context followed by the task. The reason that the task is higher up in the formula hierarchy is that if you just input the task without any context, ChatGPT still produces some kind of a meaningful output. But if we just give it the context and no task, nothing really happens because you're not telling it to do anything, you've just given it some information. Put another way, it's mandatory to have a task in your prompt. It's important to have context and exemplars, and it's nice to have persona, format, and tone. When you think of writing your prompt, just go down this mental checklist, and this formula will act as a constant reminder to just include all the relevant information required to generate a good output. Now let's break down each building block with specific examples, starting with the task. The rule of thumb here is to always include an action word, give, write, generate, analyze, and clearly articulate what your end goal is. It could be a simple task like creating a party planning checklist, or a multi-step task like setting a budget, finding suitable venues, organizing a themed event. The second component, context, is the trickiest to get right because technically there's an infinite amount of information you can give to ChatGPT. And so the trick here is to really find just the right amount of information required to constrain the endless possibilities of outputs. So I found asking myself these 3 questions to be super helpful in coming up with just enough information to get a good output from ChatGPT. What's the user background? What does success look like? What environment are they in? Back to the birthday party example, I want to plan a surprise birthday party for my best friend who loves superhero movies. There will be around 20 guests and my budget is £150. I need ideas for decorations, games, and a fun way to reveal the surprise. Give me a checklist of things to do. Could I have added more background information? Absolutely. I could have included that I want the games to be based on Marvel trivia or that I want the decorations to be Spider-Man themed. But the trick here is to include just the right amount of information to get the best output for your prompt. Moving over to the exemplars component is just a fancy way of saying examples. Basically, most of the research on large language models has suggested that including an example in your prompt can drastically improve your output. So here's a simple example. This is a poorly written invitation message for the party. We can now ask ChatGPT to rewrite this message using this structure. Now, using this framework, ChatGPT can craft specialized invitation messages for all the guests, and it's just a major improvement over the original response. Here's a slightly more complicated example for planning the event. I need 3 fun superhero themed games we can play at the party. Give me one that requires no props, one that involves teamwork, and one that's a competition with a prize. Now, instead of getting generic party games, which I'm sure ChatGPT would have given me, I'm getting tailored responses that meet the requirements of my event. And again, that's the whole purpose of examples. Main takeaway here is that exemplars are not necessary in every prompt, but if you know what kind of output you want, if you have some kind of a framework in mind, it's definitely the best way to get the desired output. Moving along, the persona component is basically who you want ChatGPT and Gemini to be. The pro tip here is to think of someone you wish you had instant access to with the task you're facing. For example, if you're planning a party, that person might be an experienced party planner. Or if you're looking for answers to interview questions, that might be a senior hiring manager. You can also include specific individuals if they're famous enough, like Gordon Ramsay for food ideas or Steve Jobs for a presentation. And by the way, I just have to share this. I asked ChatGPT to write an email in the form of Batman, and it even included things like "please let Alfred know" and signed off as the Dark Knight. So yeah, fictional people work as well, and that was actually pretty fun. I'm gonna use that. The fifth component here is format, and the pro tip here is to just close your eyes and visualize how you want the output to look. Back to the party example, I don't want a long paragraph explaining each step, so I asked ChatGPT to give it to me in the form of a checklist, and it's given me these 7 points here. And now I can directly copy this and paste it into my notes app or in my to-do list, and I can just keep track of it easily. Other common formats include bullet points, emails, code blocks, but I think one of the best ones is called the structured response. So if you just ask ChatGPT for a structured response, it'll give you this nice formatted information, which is super easy to skim and easy to act on, so you don't have to read a lot of stuff that you might not even want to read. By the way, another pro tip is that whenever I ask ChatGPT to proofread a message, I specify that all changes need to be bolded, and that way I can quickly spot what has been changed without actually trying to remember what I had prompted it and what the new output is. You know, it's just way faster that way. Let's quickly go through the last component, which is tone. Thankfully, tone is pretty easy to understand. Give me a casual or formal tone of voice. Give me a witty output. Sound enthusiastic. The bad news is that we're not always great at recalling the thousands of adjectives we've learned over the years. And so the trick is to tell ChatGPT the feeling you're going for. For example, I want the invitation to sound fun and exciting, but not too over the top. Can you suggest 5 tone keywords? Now it'll give you a list of keywords, and in the actual prompt, I can say, use a fun and lighthearted tone with a hint of excitement. And that way, I didn't have to think of the adjectives, and in fact, you can use ChatGPT to write prompts for ChatGPT, which I think is pretty fun. Now that you know the basics of prompting, my next video is going to take you from beginner to pro. So subscribe to the channel if you want to see that. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.